And welcome back to another video. We're doing an IslamiQA with Faye today, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's when an ex-Muslim like myself is going to answer your questions about Islam. And why would anyone want that? Because I have all this Islamic knowledge in my head, and I feel like it would be a waste not to present it to the world as I understood Islam, but in a way more sarcastic way. Now, this morning on Twitter, I have been popping off. Okay, I've had a lot of people telling me that I'll never find happiness, I'll never find joy, that I'm a whore. So I've just been popping off on Twitter this morning. Please ignore me, I'm in the mood today. And I'm just going to answer your questions. Now, to structure this video a bit better than the ones in the past, I'm only going to answer about 10 questions. And they're quite heavy questions as well, so this video might still be really long, but I'm going to be answering those questions, and then I will continue with the others in the next video. If you have more questions, please feel free to comment down below or tweet at me. I record all the questions that people ask me for these videos so that I can answer them in a later segment. So if you have any questions about Islam that you would like the opinion of an ex-Muslim on, please feel free to send me those. I would love to answer them. Oh, and the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to tag the people who have asked me these questions, because I feel it's unfair. I feel it's unfair to address their question and then have them not answered and not seen by the people who asked them. So I will address these questions and then also tag those people. So if you want a shout out, please also, I guess, send me your questions. Sorry, just getting comfortable. So the first question I have for today is, does the Quran really preach hate? Now, something that a lot of people don't know about the Quran, that they should know about the Quran, is that the Quran was not compiled in one go. The Quran was revealed in stages. So when you study the Quran, you find out that there's two different periods of revelation. The first one is the Makki period, which is when Muhammad received all his revelations during his time in Makkah, and the Madani period, which is when he received all the revelation in Medina. So the Makki period is before all the battles and the wars and stuff, and the Muslims were a minority. There were only about 40 odd Muslims in Makkah at the time. So those verses are more about patience and, worship and stuff like that. It's when you go into the Madani period that you find a lot more of the harsher verses about war and about battles. And because the Quran was revealed over time, it wasn't, all in one go. Many verses are abrogated and replaced by others, because those old verses no longer apply. So with a lot of Madani surahs or chapters in the Quran, they can appear very violent and vicious, especially those ones that are referencing the battles, because Muhammad himself took part in at least 3 major battles before he conquered Makkah with Islam. So I wouldn't say that they preach hate, but there is definitely violence in the Quran, and it's a significant amount of violence that is in the Quran. The second question from Chatterjee Akash, who is the user who sent me these questions, sorry, I may not have mentioned that, is why the word kafir exists. So the word kafir in Arabic is loosely translated as a non-Muslim or a disbeliever or an infidel. But kafir actually means someone who conceals the truth, someone who knows the truth and conceals it. And it is from the understanding of Muslims, especially at the time of Muhammad, that people who were kafirs knew that Islam was the truth, they just didn't want to accept it. Other words used in sort of relation to this would be munafiqs, which means hypocrites, or people who pretended to be Muslims at the time, or mushriks, who were idolaters or polytheists. And Muslims, well, Islam doesn't really view polytheists in a very positive light, because the biggest sin in Islam is shirk. And that's why the word kafir exists, is to separate Muslims from non-Muslims or disbelievers or people who conceal the truth. So the next question is, if Islam is secular, why is Allah the only God and the better God? First of all, this is a bit of a leading question because Islam isn't secular. It's in no way secular. Islam as a political system is an extremely totalitarian system because everything is controlled. Everything is completely controlled. There is no secularism. Even from the actions of the Prophet, he went into Makkah and he destroyed all the idols that the Arabs worshipped at the time. He destroyed them. He didn't keep them in a museum. He wasn't like, oh, you idol worshippers, I know I'm here to conquer you, but you can, worship whatever you want to worship. No, he destroyed every single idol there was in Makkah and also expelled all the disbelievers from both Makkah and Medina. It is in no way secular. But why is Allah the only God and the better God? Is because shirk or assigning partners with Allah or polytheism is the gravest sin in Islam. It is the only sin that after you die, Allah cannot forgive. It is the only sin. Everything else, murder, rape, piracy, theft, fraud, anything else, Allah can forgive you for after you die. But polytheism or assigning partners with Allah is something He cannot forgive. And that's why Allah is the only God and the better God. And in no way is Islam secular. In no way. Unless it's reformed, which people are trying, but it's not really working. So his fourth question is, does the Quran really support, or Islam really support child marriage and slavery? Yes, it does. Unequivocally, yes, it does. The Prophet himself, the Prophet Muhammad, is meant to be a walking, talking example of what Muslims should be. And he himself married a child and consummated relations with a child. Now in Islam, according to Islam, a child is someone who is beneath the age of puberty. So girls usually hit puberty around 10, 11, 12, right? Some people start earlier, so like 8 or 9, and some people start later, 14, 15, 16. But generally speaking, girls hit puberty at around 10, 11, 12. And the Prophet married Aisha, who was his third wife, when she was 6 years old. And she was the daughter of Muhammad's best friend. So it was not like a political marriage. It was not like a peacemaking marriage. It was a marriage to the daughter of his best friend. But to the daughter of his best friend. So there was no need to marry her in the time and the circumstance that existed, but he still married a child who was 6 years old, and then consummated that marriage, apparently, according to Islamic sources, after she started puberty. But there's no way for us to confirm that. They consummated, or he had sex with her when she was 9 years old. So the Prophet did it, and he is an example to Muslims everywhere. So child marriage is a thing in Islam. It simply and unequivocally is a thing in Islam. And there aren't really Quran verses that explicitly state child marriage, but there's definitely implications of child marriage in the Quran. In terms of slavery, yes, there are actually rules on keeping slaves in Islam. There are rules of how you treat your slave and how you don't treat your slave in Islam. The act of freeing slaves was only in atonement for something. So if you had committed a sin, if you had broken a fast, if you had done something to, get God's wrath, freeing a slave was a means of atonement, like paying charity or paying a teeth or whatever. But you can absolutely have slaves in Islam, and those slaves can be concubines, and you can have unlimited concubines. And the way that slaves are obtained is through war. They're usually prisoners of war that are then put into slavery, or put into the homes of Muslims to act as slaves. But yeah, there you go, that's the answer on that. And the next question from the same user is, what is a woman's role in Islam? Simply put, a woman's role in Islam is to simply obey her father and her husband. But like marriage is half your religion, hardly ever told to men, always told to women. Having children. Men can't do that, so women are always told to have as many children as possible. There are verses in the Qur'an stating a woman's place, that she has to obey her husband, and if at the end of his intellectual stability she is disobeying him, he can beat her. And some people will say, oh, it's just a symbolic beating. There is no such thing as a symbolic beating. A beating is a beating. And some people will say, oh, the Prophet's example is that you can only hit her with a toothbrush. It's like, no. No, it's not. Maybe he said that, but I feel like he just said that to shut people up because it was such a barbaric rule. And also there are hadith that say that if a woman refuses to sleep with her husband, the angels curse her all evening, all night until the morning. It's really misogynistic. A woman's place in Islam is more or less to be a slave. And yes, there has been a lot of reformation, which I am happy about personally, but unfortunately in a lot of Muslim families, in a lot of Muslim communities, in a lot of Muslim countries, this idea that a woman's place is beneath that of a man still, is very, very prevalent. And it's unfortunate, and I hate it, and I wish it would change. So next question from VIVIIXC. Do you feel that young British Muslims suffer with an identity crisis, torn between traditional Islamic standards within the family and then the outside world, life in Britain and the West, etc.? I do feel like they struggle, because I certainly struggled with my Islamic identity, although not very much, because I had a love for Islam before I left. So for me, Islam was just like the best, and it didn't really matter what the West wanted from me. I was going to follow my religion. But I do feel like many Muslims in this country, I live in the UK, in the UK and elsewhere in the West, who are, presented with secular values or values from a different community or a different faith, do struggle with their identity. And I think it's interesting to see that evolution and the adoption of secular values, as well as remaining Muslim, if a little stubbornly, because they don't really know what's going on in their religion. And to be honest, that's a plus for me, because they don't follow that religion then. They assume that identity, but they don't really know what it's about, and I'm not really that mad about it. I have a problem when you replace secular values with really intolerant values. Like, I have no true problem with people being Muslims and people worshipping and fasting and going to Hajj and whatever. It's your life, your money, your religion. It's, I don't care about that. I have a problem when you start excluding other people, when you start, limiting what other people can do, even though they have the right to do whatever they want because of your religion. That is not something that I can stand by, and it's something that I deeply hate. And it's something that even when I was a Muslim, I never liked. I didn't like people who forced things onto other people, because this is not a Muslim country. You can't force Islamic values on someone who is not a Muslim. It doesn't make any sense to do that in a non-Muslim country. Like, okay, I could kind of understand your mentality if you were in like a Muslim state, but you're not. So I don't understand why you're implicating those measures onto people who aren't Muslims. And even people who are, to be honest. Like, it's their life. Just live and let live. It's not difficult. Next question from Vandema 09287787. Why do Muslims always portray themselves as victims? The reason they do that, the reason that Muslims present themselves as victims, is because some Muslims pay way too much attention to too many conspiracy theories. And I personally was a victim of this. Like, I used to do this, and I used to believe that the US was against everything that Muslims wanted. And it's silly. I used to watch a lot of Illuminati conspiracies as well, and it's just silly. It's silly because it's not the way that anything is. It just simply isn't. But the way that the reason why they portray themselves as victims is because in the last 20 years, soon after 9/11, Muslims were blamed for everything. And now the West, especially people on the left, have overcorrected by saying that nothing is wrong in Muslim communities and with Islam. And it's unfortunate because there is so much wrong with Islam and things that go on in Muslim communities. And, you know, I deal with that on a daily. I work in education, I hear a lot of stories, and it's terrifying that things like that are still going on. But that's why. Because they went through a serious period of scrutiny soon after 9/11, when the two towers fell, or the Twin Towers fell, sorry, Lord of the Rings. They you know, felt a lot of hardship because they were being blamed for all these terrorist attacks, like in a large number. And now, because the West is overcorrecting, they feel constantly like victims. And that's why they do that. The next question is from Srinivas_Curry. I think that's how you pronounce that. I'm sorry, there's so many planes out here. I really should have rethought me sitting outside. Is Islam a religion of peace? I think a lot of people like to say it's a religion of peace. I'm not entirely sure why. I wouldn't personally say that Islam is a religion of peace, simply because during the time that when Islam started, there were 3 different battles that the messenger of Islam participated and led. So I personally would not call it a religion of peace. I don't really get why people would keep propagating that, because it simply isn't. A lot of people say that Islam and Salam are really close sounding in Arabic, and that's why, Islam is derived from the word peace, which is Salam in Arabic, but it really isn't. Islam is derived from the word for submission, and that is what Islam is about. It's about submitting your will to the lordship of Allah and the rulings of the Prophet. Not a religion of peace. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a religion of war, but I mean, there's more of a case to make for that than there is for the religion of peace. Simple facts, you know, he fought in 3 battles in his lifetime while Islam was still, you know, in the baby stage. So, I mean, I don't want to be problematic. That's all I'm saying, is that there's more of a case to say that it's a religion of war than there is to say that it's a religion of peace. That's all I'm saying. Next question from Dante Allegory. In your opinion, is there a true religion or ideology that you find to be proper? Right now, I don't follow a religion. I don't have a religion. I class myself as non-religious. In terms of my belief in God, I'm an atheist. But I tend to identify myself as non-religious. I do believe in like certain sayings and things, you know, like very simple things that people can live by, like live and let live, and, you know, don't be a dick, and you know, don't do unto others what you wouldn't want done to you. I don't know the exact quote, but you know what I mean. I tend to follow small little proverbs at the moment. I don't have a organized religion that I follow, but my main purpose in life right now is to just do what makes me happy, and that's what I'm doing, and I'm living. So yeah, that is my thought. I just want to let people live. Part of that sort of comes into my activism with, you know, not necessarily promoting apostasy, but promoting that apostasy is okay. I want to normalize it in Muslim families and Muslim communities so that people just stop throwing their kids out. Like, it's worth enduring the headache of people being like, oh, you should cover more, or you should fast more, or you should do this, or you should pray more, whatever. It's worth that if you have a home, you know? If you're out on the street and people are hunting you down, it's not worth it. It doesn't feel worth it anyway, even though it might be for you. And I just want people to stop throwing their kids out. That's my prerogative. That's my mission in life, is to try and help the effort so that people stop doing that, because it's truly disgusting that what people will do and what they will put before their own children. It's truly disgusting to me that people would do that. And the last question of the day, which is kind of related, is from Lauralee Simmons. How can we help people who want to leave Islam? A simple way is to just listen. I think many people turn people away from, you know, their doubts and their questions because people are very aloof and nobody wants to listen to anybody, and you know, there's a lot of judgment there. And with Muslims are very scared of being influenced. I kind of talked about this a little bit today on my Twitter, but Muslims are very scared of being influenced, and that still goes for people who are doubting, because they feel like they're only doubting either because of like wiswas, or like the whisperings of the devil, or because of the influences around them. So I would say that instead of, you know, telling Muslims what to do, which to them feels very aggressive, not like aggressive in a violent way, but aggressive in like a battle of the hearts and minds kind of way, I would say just ask them questions and listen to them, and, you know, really understand their struggle, because it really is a struggle to leave Islam. It's a true struggle, and people underplay it all the time. It's a real struggle. I myself have been completely disowned from my family because I left Islam, because I have a white boyfriend, because of all these things, you know, because I didn't want to cover my head, because I reported my dad because he was extremely abusive, you know, and it's really difficult for someone who's just simply not being listened to ever by their family and by their community to then go to a person who's just going to tell them what to do. So I think the first step to someone who is doubting and has come to you because they're thinking about leaving Islam is to ask them pointed questions, like, why do you want to leave Islam? What do you not like about Islam? You know, have you researched it? Are you safe? Things like that. Just come from a place of understanding and listen to them. Let them vent, because Lord knows they probably have a lot to vent about. And also, Muslim families are very, very private most of the time. Even if there are serious things going on, like forced marriages, abuse, things like that, Muslims will drill it into their kids that the West is out to get them, and if they tell anybody outside the family that these things are going on, then their entire family is going to be destroyed. I was told that, for example. And it prevented me from, you know, doing the right thing and reporting my family for a very, very long time. So there needs to be that trust there. And if you are a close friend with a Muslim who is struggling with this, or you think might be struggling with this, first please build that trust before you start asking questions, because they will break that connection because they feel threatened. It's a true threat that they feel. And it's not your fault, and it's not their fault. It's just a condition of the environment that they have been raised in. So please do my sort of first response advice about, you know, helping people who want to leave Islam or who are in like a crisis situation. Come from a place of understanding, ask questions, and build trust. Keep them very close to you, make them feel comfortable with you, and yeah, that would be more or less my advice on that. Obviously, if anyone's in a very dire situation where they are being beaten, or they're being shipped off to be married to someone, or forced into a marriage, please do report that. That should not be something that you keep quiet from the authorities, because the authorities are really the only people who can stop that. And it's, you know, it's something that is very, very serious, very, very serious. So please, if you are aware of those circumstances, if you're a neighbor and you hear a lot of screaming and, you know, things like that, please do report it. It's essential that you report it. And it is 100% not an invasion of privacy, because the person who is abusing that person is literally taking away their right to live as a human being. It is like, you cannot hide that. You shouldn't hide that. And you will find it so shocking when you see the stats of people who know that someone in the house next to them is being abused and they don't say anything about it. So yeah, that is my advice. That is my segment for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I answered your questions fully. Again, if you have questions for me, please leave them in the comments below or tweet at me. I don't really respond on my Instagram, so please don't reach me there. But the main sources that you can find me is down below in the comments and on my Twitter. If you would like some advice or personal advice, please reach me by email. Also visit the Faithless Hijabi website. If you have your leaving stories or your ex-hijabi stories, please send those submissions there. We love to receive stories and we love to edit them and post them online and just spread the word that we are here, we're ex-Muslims, we're here, and it's okay. It's okay to leave Islam. So yeah, that is where I will end this video. If you liked it, please leave a like and a comment. You know, I always love reading those. And you know, share it everywhere if you feel like this is helpful to anyone. But thank you, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.